What if I told you there's a nutrient deficiency so common that it affects 75% of the world's population, and some researchers argue that having low levels may shorten your life expectancy as much as smoking cigarettes? Now, this is not a vitamin or a mineral, but a fat. Specifically, the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA.
We were able to show that people had the highest omega-3 level were least likely to die.
Now, the fat your brain, your heart, your eyes, and your immune system are built from.
That a diet low in EPA is the 6th most important dietary cause of illness.
Fats that used to be nearly all of our food when our diet wasn't so processed, when animals ate grass, and when we ate more from the ocean. So today, I'm going to show you 12 signs your omega-3 levels may be too low, what the research actually says, and exactly how to fix this dangerous deficiency. Sign number 1, your brain feels slower than it used to. Now, DHA is the single most abundant omega-3 in your brain. Your neurons' membranes are literally built from it. So when levels run low, the machinery of thinking, signal speed, synapse flexibility, and memory formation degrades.
Higher omega-3 levels in the blood predict lower risk, roughly 50% lower risk for developing dementia.
So higher omega-3 status is associated in multiple studies with slower cognitive decline and lower dementia risk. And this matters to me personally because I carry both genes for Alzheimer's. Do you think that this metric is even more important for people with my risk factor?
Yeah, I think it's getting a high omega-3 index is more important for people who have ApoE4, either 1 or 2 copies.
So brain fogs in your 40s is not just aging, could be a sign of a deficiency. Sign number 2, your mood is flat, anxious, or even aggressive. Now, this is some of the most striking research in the entire field. Populations eating more omega-3 rich seafood consistently show lower rates of depression. And clinical trials also show meaningful antidepressant effects from omega-3 supplementation in a subset of people.
Many of the psychological and psychiatric conditions have an inflammatory component. So I think neuroinflammation is super important. But what is interesting is where people have done research in people with, for example, depression or psychiatric or psychological disorders, oral EPA seems to be quite effective.
So omega-3s regulate neuroinflammation, and they keep neuronal membranes fluid enough for serotonin and dopamine signaling to work properly.
So we have data on homicide death in the US in 7 different countries, all the way back to the 1900s. And as the diet changes, there's an almost perfect association to increasing rates of homicide death by decreasing levels of tissue.
In kids, supplementing has also been shown to reduce violence.
We gave omega-3 fatty acids to kids and reduced their aggression by 50%. The parents didn't take the omega-3s, and their psychopathology and interpersonal violence went down by about 30%. So this shows not only a direct effect of the omega-3s on the kids, but a spreading societal effect in families, reducing psychopathology and violence.
If your mood has drifted down, or you're feeling more aggressive and irritable lately, and nothing in your life explains it, your fatty acid status is one of the cheapest things you can check. Sign number 3, you can't build muscle. So if you're hitting the gym without any real results, it might not be a lack of effort. Recent research suggests you might be low in omega-3s.
So there's some old studies showing that muscle protein synthesis and degradation are influenced by omega-3s. And I think part of that is to do with inflammation, because inflammation drives muscle protein breakdown. So if you have anti-inflammatory actions of omega-3s in muscle, you can stop this drive to muscle protein breakdown.
Isn't it wild that fat that was once demonized might actually help you build a better body composition? Sign number 4 is dry eyes, dry skin, and brittle hair and nails. Now, every cell membrane in your body needs omega-3s, and the tissues that turn over fastest show shortages first. So dry, gritty eyes have been directly linked to omega-3 status. DHA is concentrated in the retina and tear-producing glands. So rough and bumpy skin, dandruff, brittle nails, dull hair, these can all signal that your body is rationing structural fats.
When you modify the composition of your cell membrane, you can also improve your skin health. So thanks to the Omega study, and at the end, people were decreasing the area of the skin of their body with psoriasis. And this is the orange plot, and with the gray plot, you don't have any improvement.
Now, in a 26-week study, omega-3 phospholipids measurably improved psoriasis, so skin can clue you in to what your cells are missing. Sign 5 is joint pain and slow recovery. So EPA and DHA are precursors to specialized pro-resolving mediators, or SPMs. Resolvins, protectins, myricinins, these are the molecules that actively end an inflammatory response and switch your tissue into repair mode.
Understands the difference between anti-inflammatory molecules and a resolution of inflammation. Actually, it's more or less the same when you have a dinner with your family or friends at home. When they leave, anti-inflammation, they are going away. You still have to clean up all the mess. It's a resolution of inflammation. Even if the inflammation is not there, you have to eliminate some apoptotic cells, some debris and all that stuff, and sometimes to repair. If they have broken a glass, you have to repair. And this is the resolution of inflammation.
No omega-3s, no SPMs. And inflammation that should resolve in days can smolder for weeks. So if your joints ache, you wake up feeling puffy, and your workouts take forever to recover from, you may have a resolution problem. Sign number 6, your cardiovascular numbers are drifting. So high triglycerides are one of the most omega-3 responsive markers in all of nutrition. And this is why prescription fish oil exists. Now, rising triglycerides, creeping blood pressure, and an elevated heart rate, these can all point toward an omega-3 shortfall.
Omega-3s also help with keeping your blood thin, meaning kind of like taking an aspirin. And the other thing is the omega-3s will actually slow your heart rate. Resting heart rate is slowed down a few beats a minute, with maybe 2 or 3, which is, sounds like, well, so what? Well, if you've only got so many heartbeats in a lifetime, slowing that ticker down is maybe one of the reasons.
But there's also a deeper story here. Research now shows resolvins are involved in stabilizing arterial plaque, and an unstable plaque, not just the plaque itself, is what triggers heart attacks and strokes. So your heart doesn't just need less inflammation, it also needs better resolution.
And what I've learned during all my studies is that it's dangerous to have atherosclerosis and a plaque. But it's even more dangerous that the plaque is not stable. And they discover that those resolvins are involved in the resolution inflammation into the cardiovascular plaque, and that could be also a good way in order to have a protection of heart attack.
Sign number 7, you can't focus, and neither can your kids. So DHA is critical for the developing brain. It's why a mother's body radically upregulates DHA delivery during pregnancy and breastfeeding.
Normally it's really difficult to synthesize, except during breastfeeding and pregnancy, because your body knows that you need more DHA for the baby. So there is a huge adaptation of the women's body during this period, and we can increase the concentration and the synthesis of EPA and DHA.
In dopamine neurons, when you are deficient in omega-3 fatty acids, you have half as many branches and connections as compared to being sufficient. Ability of the systems to interconnect with each other and form what are called connectomes, which I refer to as membrane singing. So one way I can describe this as, if you're going to make a violin, you don't want to make the violin out of plywood. You want to make the violin out of the most exquisite or oak or whatever you're going to make it from, and that exquisite biophysics has to be DHA. Otherwise, entire consciousness emerging from the biophysics of the membrane up through society and interconnections to our violence and aggression and interpersonal things is altered.
In children, lower omega-3 status has been repeatedly associated with attention and behavioral issues.
Some dietitians and people like that reported on this. The scores of the children at 8 years of age from these 14,000 pregnancies, if you looked at the score, the cutoff point was 2 fish meals a week. Below that, the adverse outcome for the children in terms of behavior, cognition, etc., accelerated.
Wow, scary. And supplementation has also been shown to help.
When people have done intervention studies, given omega-3s or placebo to people with ADHD, There's not uniform success. Some studies don't show a benefit, but some do show an improvement. I think we need to use higher doses and longer treatment.
And in adults, the same membrane biology applies to your focus, your working memory, and your ability to stay on task. So if the whole household is scattered, the common denominator might just be your plate. Sign number 8, you're hungry all the time. Now, this one surprises people. Your omega balance influences appetite signaling, as an omega-6 heavy balance is associated with stronger hunger signaling, maybe even the munchies, through the endocannabinoid system, much like THC.
You know, when they went looking for how cannabis works, they discovered them, and they're called endo, for in, cannabinoids. So this is a complex group of molecules, but they're made from membrane fats. Too much omega-6 in the diet, too much omega-6 in the membranes, elevated endocannabinoids, and probably a mild munchies going on. These endocannabinoids do all sorts of things, and we don't fully understand them yet. But one of the things they are involved in is in appetite.
Constant hunger may be less about willpower and more like fatty acid signaling gone wrong. Sign number 9, you often get bloated and have other gut issues. Emerging research has revealed that in addition to its systemic effects, omega-3s may also exert powerful influences in the gut, even being officially labeled as a prebiotic or substance that feeds beneficial bacteria.
You know, the gut microbiome, some people think is the center of everything: human metabolism, human health, human disease, and so on. So there are microbes that seem to thrive on EPA and DHA. There is good evidence from quite a number of human studies now that some EPA and DHA must be getting quite far down the GI tract, because you do get changes in gut microbiota. And many of the microbes that seem to come up are actually the health promoting ones.
So what are the precise benefits?
So you can have an impact not only on the gut microbiota, but also in the in your wall, the wall of your intestinal cells. So both beneficial effects.
That's amazing. Okay, so they're helping the gut barrier stay closed. They're helping the gut barrier produce mucus and stay healthy. And they're helping reduce inflammation. Sign number 10, poor sleep. Omega-3 status, especially DHA, is linked to sleep quality in both children and adults. Now, DHA participates in melatonin production, and low levels are associated with more fragmented, shallower sleep. So if you're doing everything right for sleep and it's still broken, there is another quiet variable. Sign number 11, you rarely eat fish. If fatty fish isn't on your menu at least twice a week, you're very likely under-consuming EPA and DHA. The American Heart Association's own baseline is roughly 250 to 500 milligrams a day, and most Americans don't get close. We're eating about 100 milligrams per day on average. Is that fair?
Of EPA and DHA, right. That's
EPA.
the average. The median, so the average is, that includes some people eating a lot.
Yeah.
The median is the middle intake, which is 0.
Isn't that sad? Sign 12 is your omega-3 index is under 8%, or you've never measured it. Now, unlike most things in nutrition, this one has a number. The omega-3 index measures EPA and DHA as a percentage of the fatty acids in your red blood cell membranes, a 3 to 4 month rolling average, like an A1C, but for your fats. Below 4% is high risk territory. This is where researchers have drawn the smoking comparison for mortality risk, and 8% and above is the protective zone. Now, most Americans sit around 4 to 5%, mine's around 10. Some researchers like Dr. Hibbeln also recommend getting closer to 12%. Now, it's a simple finger prick test that you can do at home, and it converts this whole video from guesswork into numbers that you can retest in 3 months. Now let's talk about the fix, how to raise your omega-3s the right way. So if you saw yourself in 3 or more of these signs, here is the plan. 1 is eating fatty fish 2 to 3 times a week. Use the SMASH acronym: salmon, mackerel, anchovy, sardines, herring. Small, oily, low mercury, affordable. I eat some form of fish almost daily, and canned sardines and herring are great places to start. 2 is add fish roe, the most concentrated whole food source of DHA. Now, a teaspoon of roe delivers EPA and DHA in the phospholipid form, the form your body and brain absorbs dramatically better than standard fish oil, and the form that crosses into your brain. You can also try our omega-3 complex, which is made from herring roe, contains pro-resolving mediators, and is tested for contamination and purity in every batch. 3, upgrade animal products.
You mentioned red meat livestock, and you mentioned white meat livestock there. They have a higher omega-3 content in their meat, and in fact in dairy cows in their milk, if they're fed on pasture compared to the rations that are commonly used in farming now. But a more pasture-fed way of looking after your livestock is also part of the solution here. So then you get little bits of these helpful fatty acids in all these different foods, and together this helps people. They don't need to change their diet, they're just using a different type of the same sort of food that they're normally eating.
Now, whenever possible, choose 100% grass-fed and finished beef and truly pastured pork, poultry, and eggs. Now, research has shown eating this type of meat can significantly increase levels of omega-3 in your blood. And 4, if you supplement, know what you're buying. Now, most fish oil comes from farm-raised fish in the triglyceride or ethyl ester form. It's often oxidized or underdosed and does not contain preformed SPMs or pro-resolving mediators.
Fish oil is different than omega-3. You need to be aware all the fish oil have not the same concentration of EPA and DHA, so don't hesitate to look at that and to be sure that you have 50% of EPA and DHA in the fish oil that you have.
So choose a high quality supplement like our omega-3 complex and check the actual EPA and DHA content. Do they contain SPMs? Are they tested for oxidation standards? And do they contain the phospholipid form? If you're a vegan, you can also opt for algal supplements. 5 is to dose by the goal. So for the general prevention, 250 milligrams of EPA and DHA daily is a great place to start. If you're pregnant, maybe more like 500 milligrams, maybe a gram even if you want a little bit of a margin. For high triglycerides or existing heart concerns, studies use 2 to 4 grams under a doctor's guidance. Give it time. Your membranes take about 2 to 3 months to remodel, and the full benefit in the heart failure meta-analysis took about a year. Also, if you're overweight, some researchers believe you may need a little bit more. And Dr. Harris has come up with a protocol for estimating the amount you'll need based on your current omega-3 index status.
Let's get really practical. What do you think the biggest levers are?
To get your omega-3 in that 8%
Yes.
index. We've done some studies asking the question, if you're starting out with an omega-3 index of like 4%, which is not untypical.
Yeah.
We have done studies to say, well, how much EPA DHA do you need kind of on average to get up into that 8%? And it turns out to be about 1,500 milligrams a day of EPA plus DHA from what that person's eating. And if their omega-3 index, the baseline is 6%, then they probably need about another 800 milligrams a day. The closer you are to 8%, the less additional EPA DHA you need, obviously. So we have this omega-3 index calculator on our website at OmegaQuant. They send in a blood test. They get a result back on their omega-3 index. They find it's 5.2%.
Yep.
Say, okay, pretty typical American. And then you can put that 5.2% into the calculator, and it'll tell you probably, 1,200 milligrams of EPA DHA would be what you'd want to add to your diet.
6 is to close the back door and cut out omega-6 rich foods. So less seed oils, less processed food. Our ancestors ate these in roughly an equal balance, but today most Americans eat somewhere between 10 to 20 times more omega-6s than omega-3s. And because both families compete for the same enzymes and the same spot in your cell membranes, drowning in omega-6s functionally creates an omega-3 deficiency, even if you eat fish occasionally.
It's a bit like if you've got one chair at a table and you've got 2 people going for the chair, right? So one of them, let's say one of them is omega-6 and omega-3, only one of them's going to get to the chair. Now, if you've got 10 people in the room and 9 of them are arachidonic acid and 1 is EPA, it's obvious that more arachidonic acid is going to make it to that chair simply because there's more arachidonic acid in the room.
So we want more omega-3s, but we also need a balance.
You can elevate that omega-3 index from a level of 1 to a level of 8 simply by backing off your omega-6 fatty acids and letting that transformation occur. My pithy way to say it is mix the 6 and you free the 3.
Ooh, I hadn't heard that. So raising omega-3s while drowning in omega-6s is filling the bathtub with the drain open.
In the Philippines, the amount of linoleic acid, the omega-6, is about 0.8% of calories, and you only need about 278 milligrams a day. As compared to all these countries that have higher seed oil intakes, the U.S. estimating about 9% calories from linoleic acid, so it's a little tenfold increase. So instead of 278 milligrams of omega-3 to meet the Japanese target tissue, we need almost 4 grams.
Wow. 7 is test, don't guess. So for $50 to $75, you can get your omega-3 index right now, change your plate, and retest in 3 to 4 months. Aim for 8% or higher. I started at 6% and have worked my way up to 10% with just a few small tweaks, and it may even help you to live a little bit longer. According to Dr. Bill Harris, this test is a better predictor of your risk of mortality than cholesterol. And just to sum it up, omega-3 deficiency doesn't announce itself, but it shows up as a slower brain, a flatter mood, drier eyes, achier joints, and a hungrier appetite. 100 small downgrades that you learn to call normal, but it's not normal, and it could be stealing the quality and the length of your life. So go watch the full interview with Dr. Brochot, the fish oil lie, for everything about EPA, DHA, and pro-resolving mediators with the link below. And if this was helpful, like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, how many of the 12 signs are you living with? And if someone you love never eats fish, please send them this video.